when you are writing your transformations, I'm going to ask you to say what kind of transformations you have when you see them. I started kind of going over things, but this is the first time I'm actually writing down exactly what you're going to write down. On a quiz or test, how we like take it partially in the computer, you'll type these in. So spelling, I don't take off for spelling, but Canvas will mark it wrong, and then I'll have to go back and fix it. And if you just spell it right in the first place, it's a lot easier. Plus, you'll get it right away rather than having to wait till, I go back and fix it. So there are some words that people tend to spell wrong. I'm going to spell everything correct up here. Copy them correct. So we're going to start with the function notation. So every single time we have a function, f of x, a function plus a number. This is what we've been doing the past few days, only we were doing it by looking at the graphs and sketching stuff. Now we're going to write words to describe this. So if we're doing plus a number plus k, that is an outside, oopsies, that's an outside transformation. And anything on the outside, does anybody remember from yesterday? Everything on the outside is one direction. It's either vertical or horizontal. Does anybody remember? It is vertical, right? So anything on the outside is vertical. So up or down, vertical. However you want to describe it so it makes sense to you. So when I have plus a number on the outside, that's a vertical transformation. We are going to write the words, bless you, we are going to write the words translate. So translate is a mature vocabulary word. We're not going to say it goes, even though it means the same stuff. Translate. Where would we translate if we add a number? Does anybody know? So we're doing vertical, so my options are up or down. So translate up by how far? Well, that right now is k, and then we'll write the units. So literally when you write about a transformation, this is what you're going to write, only the k will actually be a number when you see it. So translate up k units. On Canvas, it would be blank, blank, blank units. So you have to know that we're talking about a transformation or translation. You have to know to put those three things in order. You're only going to know that by practicing it over and over and over again. Okay, next one. This is also on the outside, but this time it's subtraction. So it's a vertical transformation. It's translate down, and then whatever that number is, right now it's just a k, units. Translate down k units. So I'm underlining where the blanks would be on Canvas eventually when we do this on Canvas. Today it's on paper, but I want to make sure that you aren't like caught off guard when we finally do it on Canvas. Okay, so then we get to f of x plus h, and that one is on the inside of the function. Anything on the inside is horizontal. So my options for horizontal would be left or right. But there is one more thing about everything on the inside, everything horizontal. It's also like not common sense. We could say it's the opposite operation. So these two, I wrote it for both of them because they're both inside horizontal. Both of these are going to be translations, so translate. But when I see plus a number, what direction are we going to go? Left, because that's not common sense. Left, H is whatever that number is, units. So then when I see X minus some number, we would translate right, H units. Okay, before I go any further, notice that all of these are the plus or minus. All of them are adding or subtracting. Anytime we're doing adding or subtracting, that the key word is translate. So for all of these are either adding or subtracting. We're using translate. That's our fancy word. So if I identify something as adding or subtracting, my word is translate. Okay. The next two are when we have a negative sign, which is multiplication. It is multiplying by -1. When we have a negative sign, does anybody remember what that does to the graph? It's a reflection. So first of all, this first one, this negative sign, that's on the outside of the function. And we talked about outside just above. Outside is vertical or up or down. So what you're going to write is you're going to write reflect in the, and then just a reminder, where do I want to put? So I'm about to do something with my hand that would not show up on the video, but basically I'm going to take my hand, if somebody's watching this video, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to up and down, make my hand go up and down so I can show that it's reflecting up and down, okay? There's my hand reflecting, except I can't draw it that way, but stop being jealous of my artistic ability. All right, so what axis did I just draw? That's the x-axis. So if I'm reflecting up or down, I pull out my axis and I'm like, ooh, that's the x-axis. Okay, it's much easier for me to like do it physically than draw it. So this is the x-axis. Do you have to remember which axis it is? Yeah. That's why I'm giving you ways of remembering. Maybe if I drew the axis a different color. Okay, so then we have our next one is inside. So if we have a negative sign that's on the inside of the function, that's going to be horizontal, which is left and right. So we're going to start with reflect in the. So right now you can say y-axis because I already wrote x-axis. But when you're doing this on your own, how are you going to come up with that? That's why I suggest my silly little take my hand and like. I can't draw it backwards. That's supposed to be the thumb. There's the thumb. Okay. So if I'm going left and right, that is the y-axis that it's reflecting in. Okay. So now I've got my like, see? Okay. All right. Then we get to what we did last class was all of our shrinks and our stretches. So first of all, we notice that this A value is on the outside. Outside is vertical. Okay. And then we also have if A is greater than 1 for part of this. And remember, for vertical, this stuff is common sense. It's like exactly what you would think. So how I word this one is we're going to say, first of all, it's vertical. So that is a word that people normally spell wrong. If they're going to misspell a word, it's normally vertical. Are you writing this stuff down? You're not. You have another hand. It's going to be messy. But where are you going to get all of the words that I'm writing down? Okay, so vertical is the first word. Then we have to decide if it's a stretch or a shrink, which I'll help you in just a second. After vertical, either stretch or shrink, which I'll fill in a second. The next words are by a factor of, and then we're going to have the number, which at this moment is an A. I don't know what number it's going to be, but by a factor of, and then some number. So remember, if A is greater than 1, if I multiply a number by a number bigger than 1, what will that do? It will make it stretch. It'll make it bigger. So that's common sense. So we're going to have stretch for this one. So my next one, if A is somewhere between 0 and 1, we're going to do a vertical. This one will be a shrink by a factor of, and then whatever that number is that they give you. So that's how you're going to word that transformation. And then finally, we've got inside. We've got like a B value on the inside. That's horizontal. And remember, it's going to be opposite of what we would think. It's going to be opposite of common sense. So this is going to be a horizontal. So if B is greater than 1, I would think that would be a stretch, but it's opposite of what I'd normally think. This one is a shrink. And then here's a surprise, because we haven't done this yet. By a factor of, this is something different we haven't done yet, 1 over B. So I don't put B as the factor. I put 1 over B as the factor. By the way, 1 over B is the reciprocal of B. That's what 1 over B means. It's the reciprocal. So we end up putting the reciprocal in our words because everything's kind of opposite. So for the second one, if B is between 0 and 1, we're going to do a horizontal. That's going to be a horizontal stretch by a factor of 1 over B. And again, that is the reciprocal of whatever B is. So these last 4 that we did, the vertical stretch and vertical stretch and shrink, horizontal stretch and shrink, those are always when we are multiplying by a number. So in the equation, if we are multiplying by a number, that's always a stretch or a shrink. If we are adding or subtracting, that's always a translate. And then if there's a negative sign, that's a reflection. Okay? So now when you do your assignment, you could look at this side, or you could look at the other side, which are going to be actual examples. But right now, it's going to be a little hard to flip back and forth. So I'm going to help you fill all this stuff in. That way you have examples to go off of. So what's your assignment? And your assignment's the second page. So what your assignment looks like is I'm going to give you an equation. You're going to describe all of the transformations. I wrote this here. I don't think I wrote it on the assignment page, but it says we will look at the function from left to right. We're going to describe the transformations in that order. That's so when you go on Canvas and have to do it on a quiz, it's the same that it's been in homework. So make everything exactly the same, so it's not like all of a sudden you've never seen this before. So I'm going to go left to right in my equation, and everything that's a transformation we're going to describe down here. So first of all, what is the parent function for this particular equation? The parent function, yes, I heard you guys say it correctly. The parent function would be something like f of x equals x squared. So in g of x, in question A, the x and the squared are not transformations. That tiny little 2, that exponent, not a transformation. That just tells me what the original graph looks like. And now I know it's a U shape. Everything else is a transformation. So the very first thing when we go to the left of this equation, the very first thing we come to is that negative sign. So I'm going to talk about the negative sign first. Then I come to the 2. And is that 2 being added, subtracted, multiplied? What's happening with that 2? That's a multiplication because it's next to a parenthesis with no sign. So we should know that's multiplication. How about inside? We've got this 3. There's a minus in front of it. Is that subtracting or is that multiplication? That's subtracting. That's not a reflection. That's subtraction. Subtract 3. And then finally, we have this negative sign and this 5, except is it a negative sign or is it a subtraction sign? That's subtraction. Okay? Had to go over that because we had people not understand that in my last class. So we're looking to see if it's adding, subtracting for sure, looking to see if it's multiplication. So now, every time we have a negative sign, that's reflect. So we have to figure out which axis. So let's decide, is this negative sign on the outside or the inside of the x squared? It's the outside. So anything that's outside is vertical. So I'm just putting a V for vertical. So I'm going to take out my hand, like I drew the picture of. I'm taking out my hand. I'm going to vertically reflect this thing. And then I'm going to sneak in an axis and say, which axis is that? X. So you guys watching me is not helping you remember this. Come on, let's all look silly together. Come on. Come on. This is the x-axis. Next time I do it, you pull out your axis as well. All right, next is times by 2. We need to decide if that's a vertical or a horizontal. Is it on the outside or the inside? The outside. That's the outside, so outside is vertical. And actually, I'm going to highlight really fast. Everything on the inside, I'm highlighting. Everything on the inside that's being squared, I just highlighted. So now you can really tell what's outside and what's inside. So if it's on the outside, that's vertical. And we will say vertical. It's either going to be a stretch or shrink by a factor of 2. I do not put negative 2. Why do I not put negative 2? We already did the negative. It's a separate thing. So now, if I multiply by 2, does that make something bigger or smaller? So stretch. All right, the minus 3, is that inside or outside? So horizontal. So anything horizontal is going to be opposite of common sense. If we are adding or subtracting, the word is translate. So my next one's also going to be translate. Because it's horizontal, my options are left or right. Because my options are left or right, I'm thinking not common sense. It's subtract 3. Which way are we going? To the right. And 3 units. So the next one, that one's on the outside, so it's vertical. It is common sense. If I'm subtracting 5, where are we going? Down by how much? 5 units. Done. So that's what you're going to write. That's basically like what your homework's going to be like. Okay, we're just going to do a few more examples. So if you get stuck, you have one that you could look at, an example to look at when you're done. When you're stuck. All right, so here's example B. I'm going to highlight the inside of the parent function. My parent function for this one. This is square root. It would be like f of x equals square root x. So anything that is not square root x is a transformation. First thing we come to is 4/5. Is that adding, subtracting, multiplying? Do we not know, or are we just lazy and waiting for one person to answer? Multiplying. You're right. Does everybody know that's multiplication? How do we know it's multiplication? There's no other signs, right? That's how we know it's multiplication. There's not a plus sign there. Okay. Next thing I come to is the negative sign. Then I come to a 3, and then a plus 10. By the way, the 3 is multiplied. Sorry, I forgot to say that. And then adding a 10. All right, if we are multiplying, that's a stretch or shrink. This multiplication is on the outside, so it's vertical. I guess I could have done this while we were writing them out. The negative sign is on the inside, so it's horizontal. The 3 inside, horizontal. The 10 outside, vertical. 4/5. If it is a multiplication, then it's a vertical. It's going to either be a stretch or shrink, and my factor is going to be 4/5. So we have to decide, will 4/5 make something bigger or make it smaller? Smaller, it's less than 1, bigger than 0, less than 1. So this is a shrink. ET. How about you start answering the questions? Since you can't write or won't write, start answering the questions. All right, the next thing we have is a negative sign. And a negative sign, but besides the fact that it's on the inside, the negative sign is always what word? Reflect. Always reflect. So then we have to decide which axis. So this is horizontal. So I take out my hand, and horizontally, I am reflecting that hand. And then I say, which axis is that reflecting? The y-axis. Times by 3. That is multiplication. So we're doing a stretch or shrink. It's horizontal. So I will start with the word horizontal. Okay, I'm going to put, if it's a stretch or shrink, last. You can do it first if you want. It doesn't matter. But I like to go to by a factor of. That's where I have to put the reciprocal of 3. So 1/3. That is the reciprocal. Hold on 1 second. I haven't really told you yet. When we actually do numbers, I could go into more detail, but it's because of, since 3 is multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. The word factor means multiply, so instead of dividing by 3, we're multiplying by 1/3. And when we actually multiply it, we see the multiplication. But today we're just writing the words. It's just everything for our horizontal is opposite, so we have to change it somehow. All right. So this, now when I go, I can either look at the original equation. I prefer to look here because if I multiply numbers by 1/3, not by 3, if I multiply numbers by 1/3, will that make them bigger or smaller? Right. So if I go off 1/3, I can go straight to saying shrink, and that is the correct answer. If I look at the 3, then I have to think opposite. But I already did that by making it 1/3. So I like to go off the number I wrote here. Like these two will go together. These two things will make sense together. Just like these things will make sense together. All right, and then the last one is plus 10. That's an adding, so we're doing translate. It's vertical, so we're going up by 10 units. All right, one more example has something you haven't seen yet. So anything inside of the absolute value is horizontal. Our parent function for this, our parent function is f of x equals absolute value of x. So anything that's not the absolute value and the x is a transformation. So where this might get confusing is I've got an extra set of parentheses. I really haven't told you much about that, but they have to be there. They have to be there. So don't change the equation. Just leave it as is. So we're going to go left to right. The first thing that I come to is a negative sign. Then I come to 2/3. Is that adding, subtracting, multiplying? Multiplying. Then we come to plus 7. That's adding. And then we come to subtract 1. The negative sign is on the inside, horizontal. 2/3, horizontal. 7, horizontal. Minus 1, vertical. Anything that's negative is reflect. So then we need to reflect it horizontally. So we take out our reflection hand, and that becomes the y-axis. Horizontal, this is multiplication. So this is a stretch or a shrink. We'll start with the word horizontal. I'm going to wait to say stretch or shrink by a factor of, and then I have to do the reciprocal. For only the horizontal ones. Okay. So I'm going to write 3/2. That's the reciprocal of 2/3. Okay, so any horizontal, you have to flip it. If it's vertical, you keep it the same. So horizontal, I'm trying to figure out if this is a stretch or a shrink. I'm going to look at 3/2. Is that bigger than 1? Yeah. Yes, it is 1.5. This is 1.5. So yes, it's bigger than 1. So this is a horizontal stretch. The words go with the number. That's why we flipped it, so we could figure out if it was a stretch or shrink. All right, next is horizontal. So this is translate left 7 and translate down 1. So in your assignment, I did not give you the underlined stuff. I actually didn't give you anything at all. So I would encourage you to make sure you're writing all the words. If you want to add the underlines in there, that's totally fine. If you know this part out front where I put the H's and B's, if that helps you, go for it. If this helps you, go for it. Do you have a question? Did I mess up? No. Oh, no. Do you have a question, Dion? Well, this horizontal was not like the opposite of common sense. It is. So if I look at 2/3, it's not like a shrink. Oh. Right? You want to say it's a shrink, but it's a stretch. And right here, when I put it in my words as flipped already. So the words and the number here match, but in the equation itself is where the not common sense thing is. Okay? It's easy to make a mistake until you get used to it. I just want to let you know on the assignment when people started working on it, they were like, wait a minute, there's not 4 transformations for every single one. Yeah. Apparently my examples, I did 4 transformations for every single one just to give you lots of practice, but there doesn't have to be 4. There could be 1 transformation. There could be 5 transformations. There could be 2 transformations. So there's like different number of transformations in your assignment. I already posted the answer key and did the submission. It is due tomorrow. So you guys have the rest of class to work on it, which is a good 11 minutes.
Excuse me.